Now let's move to health care, where I know there is a clear difference, and that has to do with the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, and it's a two-minute new segment, and that means 2 minutes each, and you go first.
Well, 4 years ago when I was running for office, I was traveling around and having those same conversations that Governor Romney talks about. And it wasn't just that small businesses were seeing costs skyrocket and they couldn't get affordable coverage even if they wanted to provide it to their employees. It wasn't just that this was the biggest driver of our federal deficit, our overall health care costs, but it was families who were worried about going bankrupt if they got sick. Millions of families all across the country. If they had a pre-existing condition, they might not be able to get coverage at all. If they did have coverage, insurance companies might impose an arbitrary limit. And so as a consequence, they're paying their premiums. Somebody gets really sick. Lo and behold, they don't have enough money to pay the bills because the insurance companies say that they've hit the limit. So we did work on this alongside working on jobs, because this is part of making sure that middle-class families are secure in this country. And let me tell you exactly what Obamacare did. Number one, if you've got health insurance, it doesn't mean a government takeover. You keep your own insurance, you keep your own doctor, but it does say insurance companies can't jerk you around. They can't impose arbitrary lifetime limits. They have to let you keep your kid on your insurance plan until you're 26 years old. And it also says that you're going to have to get rebates if insurance companies are spending more on administrative costs and profits than they are on actual care. Number two, if you don't have health insurance, we're essentially setting up a group plan that allows you to benefit from group rates that are typically 18% lower than if you're out there trying to get insurance on the individual market. Now, the last point I'd make before
2 minutes is up, sir.
No, I think I had 5 seconds before you interrupted me. Was the irony is that we've seen this model work really well in Massachusetts, because Governor Romney did a good thing working with Democrats in the state to set up what is essentially the identical model, and as a consequence, people are covered there. It hasn't destroyed jobs, and as a consequence, we now have a system in which we have the opportunity to start bringing down costs as opposed to just leaving millions of people out in the cold.
Your 5 seconds went away a long time ago.
Mr. President, with all due respect, the case for repeal of Obamacare is very strong, but let's go back to the very beginning. And I have the strongest witness that I can possibly bring against Obamacare is you. As you basically have told us as a nation that you don't think it's any good. Because if you thought it was good, you would have set it up in a way that it kicked right in. Within 6 months after being passed, it would be operational. And it's being so good, the whole country would be excited about it. We wouldn't even be having this debate tonight. There wouldn't be a Republican who would run against you in that type of climate. A man who single-handedly changed the healthcare system of the United States in a way to solve all the problems, you'd be the national hero. You'd be appointed president. You wouldn't have to be elected. They changed the Constitution, give you 5 terms. Obviously, the very fact that you set up a system and delayed implementation until after the election shows us that you think it's no good. And you know that if you do it, people are really going to be angry at you. And so you figure, you come out here, you'll still tell us how good it's going to be, and then you'll be reelected after that. You can give it to us right over the head. So I think people should be a little less naive and a little brighter and realize that when someone has something good, they show it. We've been in business a long time. We know that. When the product's good, you show the product. Product's no good, you keep talking, keep talking. And I think we're all pretty clear about what that tells us about Obamacare. So here you have a situation where you decided that you're going to revamp the whole system for 300 million people, a system that affects everyone's life. That's incredible. And affects multi-trillions of dollars. So the lives of every person in the country, the economy of the country, and by implication, the economy as it spills out into the rest of the world. And you came up with a bill. Where was the deliberation on the bill? Nobody discussed it. Nobody thought about it. You took office. They plopped down this 2,700-page document. They said, here's the bill. And suddenly we're voting on it. Nobody knows what it's about. You got a couple of sound bites there, the pre-existing conditions, 26-year-old kid. It sounds to me like that bill could have been written in a page and a half. 2,700 pages to get your kid onto the plan? I don't think so. So it's a very complex plan. Now, who made it? We don't even know who wrote it. We don't know who. Was there any research done? No research. Was there any studies done? No studies. Were there any experiments done? No experiments. You're going to take a system. Now, let's remember, we're talking about the United States healthcare, which is the best in the world. We have people coming from all over the world to our hospitals. In fact, they particularly come from the places that have national health care, like Canada. So the entire northern top half of the United States, the hospitals there are living off people from Canada escaping the Canadian healthcare system to make a nice living for doctors in Buffalo and Winnipeg and Minneapolis and all the places that are up there near the border. Cleveland, we all know that, Detroit. So here you have a thing, we're all aware of it. We all know that we have the best system. It ain't broke. Maybe there was some issues that needed some tweaking. You're going to come along, you're going to turn the whole thing upside down. 300 million people, trillions of dollars, untold projections of how much it's going to cost and continue to cost, and the cost will balloon, it'll get out of hand. A system with, we don't know who wrote it, no research, no experiments, no studies. It's insane. Now, finally, one last point. Not only was the entire public against it. I mean, there's been over 50% against Obamacare from before it was installed, voted, and there continues to be in every poll over 50% against Obamacare. So not only was the public against it, but the Congress people on your side said to you, listen, we're afraid we could lose our seats. So you sent Bill Clinton into them, and Bill Clinton said to them, no, you don't understand. In 1994, the Democrats lost Congress because we tried to do Hillary Care and we didn't do it. But if we do Obamacare, the people will respect that, they'll admire that. And you're going to do better in the congressional races in 2010. Well, what happened? All of those guys took that phony advice, and they're all wiped out. They're all gone. The Republicans got the Congress back. What does that tell you? It tells you that you stuck a knife in the back of the country, and you stuck a knife in the back of all your loyal Democrat congressmen. So on election night, when the returns come in and you lose this election, there's going to be a lot of fellows who are Democrat congressmen who lost their seats in 2010 that are going to be doing the fist pumps and the high fives. Thank you.
Do you believe, both of you, but you had the first 2 minutes on this, Mr. President, do you believe there's a fundamental difference between the two of you as to how you view the mission of the federal government?
Well, I definitely think there are differences. The first role of the federal government is to keep the American people safe. That's its most basic function. And as Commander-in-Chief, that is something that I have worked on and thought about every single day that I've been in the Oval Office. But I also believe that government has the capacity, the federal government has the capacity to help open up opportunity and create ladders of opportunity and to create frameworks where the American people can succeed. Look, the genius of America is the free enterprise system and freedom, and the fact that people can go out there and start a business, work on an idea, make their own decisions. But as Abraham Lincoln understood, there are also some things we do better together. So in the middle of the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln said, let's help to finance the Transcontinental Railroad. Let's start the National Academy of Sciences. Let's start land-grant colleges, because we want to give these gateways of opportunity for all Americans, because if all Americans are getting opportunity, we're all going to be better off. That doesn't restrict people's freedom. That enhances it. And so what I've tried to do as president is to apply those same principles. And when it comes to education, what I've said is we've got to reform schools that are not working. We used something called race to the top. It wasn't a top-down approach, Governor. What we've said is to states, we'll give you more money if you initiate reforms. And as a consequence, you had 46 states around the country who have made a real difference. But what I've also said is, let's hire another 100,000 math and science teachers to make sure we maintain our technological lead and our people are skilled and able to succeed. And hard-pressed states right now can't all do that. In fact, we've seen layoffs of hundreds of thousands of teachers over the last several years, and Governor Romney doesn't think we need more teachers. I do, because I think that that is the kind of investment where the federal government can help. It can't do it all, but it can make a difference, and as a consequence, we'll have a better trained workforce, and that will create jobs because companies want to locate in places where we've got a skilled workforce.
Mr. President, with all due respect, let's take a moment to address the issue of the role of government. This kind of little minutia, can government do a little something to kind of stimulate, to sort of alleviate, to make a little bit of a difference? Those questions were 40 years ago, 60 years ago, 80 years ago. They're not questions today with deficits of over $1 trillion. The government is involved in every aspect of every little thing, and very often to the detriment of the things they're supposed to be policing or facilitating. And so, just for an example, you know, Dave Barry, the great comedy writer from the Miami Herald and nationally successful, best-selling author, he has a book making fun of, you know, poking fun at Washington, D.C. and the government. It's called Dave Barry Hits Below the Beltway. And in that book, he makes a lot of jokes in classic humorous style, but he just stops in the middle and says, all right, you know what? I don't need to make any jokes. Let me just lay out for you what's on the government website. And he goes through departments, one after the other, sub-departments of the Department of Agriculture, of the Department of Interior. And they have mission statements that I read for a page and a half. All these silly nonsense words, liaison, of the interface, of the interaction, of the distribution, of the production, of the oversight, of the inside, of the outside. It's obviously silly and repetitive and redundant. There's agencies on top of agencies, employees on top of employees. The government is so way bloated beyond anything that anybody needs. So for us to come and say, make it sound like if I have to argue with you, I have to say, you know, wow, he doesn't like school teachers. I'm not talking about school teachers. We're talking about layers and layers and layers and layers of redundancy and just outright expenditure of taxpayer funds. I personally, I don't want to give away any private relationships, you know, reveal my sources, but I personally acquainted with several people in the employ of the federal government. And they spend very little time working. Now, I know that when you're in the White House, it is true that people around you in the White House are working 16, 18-hour days. And that's like a whole different planet. But when you come to some of these agencies, these redundant agencies, these agencies where people feel a little silly about their job because they know the whole job is silly. The people who are showing up there, if they work after 5 o'clock, the supervisor chastises them for putting in overtime. They're sitting around calculating their overtime pay. They're calculating their days off. They're planning their cruise that they're going to take in 6 months from now, and 8 months from now, and 10 months from now. They spend half the day in the gym under the guise of lunch hour and coffee at break and all this. And it's very sad. I'm going to just give one episode that I know from a very personal inside basis of when you came to office, Mr. President. So a director was given down to this particular department where my friend works, where they have a backlog of 6,000 cases, and says, you know, we have to show some efficiency. So we have to get the backlog down to 2,000 cases. So how did they do that? Did they work harder? Did they take the job more seriously? No, here's what they did. They sent out a letter to all the people who had made the applications for those, they involved things that people applied for, information, etc., where these requests were from the public. they sent out letters on Thursday. They were careful to do it on Thursday. They said, to update our files, you have exactly 5 days from the date written on this letter to respond in an envelope, which they sent an envelope without a stamp on it. And they said, you must get back to our office a renewal of your application. And if you don't, we'll assume that the application is stale and we're going to eliminate it from the file. So basically, they took the 6,000 files, they sent out these 6,000 letters to people. Only 2,000 people managed to scramble quickly enough to get the new applications filed, and then they announced that they cut down the backlog from 6,000 to 2,000, the great increase in government efficiency. So now this kind of stuff doesn't happen in private businesses, or if it happens, it doesn't last for very long because somebody gets wind of it and you get your walking papers. But that doesn't happen in the federal government, which just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and each new budget just hire more and more people, and there's more and more people interfacing and liaising and overseeing and all those things they're supposedly doing. And then, of course, with the regulations, we keep hearing there's another 10,000 pages of regulations and another 10,000 pages of regulations. Why? There's new crises, there's new issues, there's new discovered unbelievable things that the government has to get involved in. Of course not. What happens is you have all these guys, they're getting paid, so they write more regulations. They never write less regulations. They don't spend the time reviewing the regulations that someone put on the books 80 years ago, 60 years ago, 40 years ago, 20 years ago. Those are all sitting there. And on top of that, you're getting all kinds of new requirements. Plus, in the United States of America, you know, my training is in Jewish law. In Jewish law, if you're ignorance of the law is an excuse. In American law, ignorance of the law is no excuse. So there's a presumed knowledge on the part of every person doing business of 100 years and 1,000,000 pages of regulations, which obviously nobody can know all of them. And that puts people in a very poor position to be able to function as a civilized and as a productive society. Thank you very much.
Many of the legislative functions of the federal government right now are in a state of paralysis as a result of partisan gridlock. If elected, in your case, if re-elected in your case, what would you do about that?
My philosophy has been, I will take ideas from anybody, Democrat or Republican, as long as they're advancing the cause of making middle-class families stronger and giving ladders of opportunity into the middle class. That's how we cut taxes for middle-class families and small businesses. That's how we cut $1 trillion of spending that wasn't advancing that cause. That's how we signed 3 trade deals into law that are helping us to double our exports and sell more American products around the world. That's how we repealed Don't Ask, Don't Tell. That's how we ended the war in Iraq, as I promised, and that's how we're going to wind down the war in Afghanistan. That's how we went after al-Qaeda and bin Laden. So we've seen progress even under Republican control of the House of Representatives. But ultimately, part of being principled, part of being a leader is, A, being able to describe exactly what it is that you intend to do, not just saying, I'll sit down, but you have to have a plan. Number 2, what's important is occasionally you've got to say no to folks both in your own party and in the other party. And you know, yes, have we had some fights between me and the Republicans when they fought back against us reining in the excesses of Wall Street? Absolutely, because that was a fight that needed to be had. When we were fighting about whether or not we were going to make sure that Americans had more security with their health insurance, and they said no, yes, that was a fight that we needed to have.
All right.
And so part of leadership and governing is both saying what it is that you are for, but also being willing to say no to some things. And I've got to tell you, Governor Romney, when it comes to his own party during the course of this campaign, has not displayed that willingness to say no to some of the more extreme parts of his party.
Mr. President, with all due respect, when it comes to bipartisanship, to act as if you made your best effort at bipartisanship and the Republicans weren't cooperative, whoa, that is very far from the reality of what transpired. So, just in general, you're not alone in this. I mean, this has been a Democrat trick since day one. Democrats do not like to work with Republicans. And when Democrats are in power, they always say the Republicans are being obstructionists and they're creating gridlock. That's the sin. Now, if Republicans are in power, then the Democrats demand bipartisanship. Bipartisanship meaning that the Republicans should include the Democrats in the process. But so bipartisanship only seems to work one way. You know, the Republicans are supposed to go along with Democrats, but Democrats don't have to go along with Republicans. And you said quite openly, hey, we won the election. You know, tell the Republicans in Congress we won. And it's going to go our way. So it was your way or the highway, and you got your way. But now you may live to regret it, because you used your position to push through very unpopular legislation, and now you live or die by that legislation. So let's see what the American public has to say about that aspect of it. Now, let's just go through a couple of the episodes here, because people may not remember. It's 4 years of a presidency, but so many episodes in the area of bipartisanship. You called in Senator Grassley and 2 other senators and try to get them to go against the rest of the Republican caucus. And you said that that'll make it bipartisan. Senator Grassley said 3 people is not bipartisan for a bill of this size. That's as far as you wanted to go. You were willing to have a couple of sellouts join you, and that was your big effort for bipartisanship. Or on the stimulus bill, you pulled American Spectator and the senators from Maine over to your side, and that was the bipartisanship, which went exactly the way you intended it to go. You didn't make any real concessions on their behalf, and you created this big stimulus, $700 billion that, you know, disappeared. Where did it go? What did it do? So that's your version of bipartisanship. If they do exactly what you tell them to do, it's bipartisan. When you met with the Republicans over health care, and you know, you just put down Tom Coburn, and you were not cooperative in any way. You didn't indicate any openness to being cooperative. It's been reported by Bob Woodward and many other journalists that compared to previous presidents, you've had the least availability for the Republican leaders. You know, you're not available for them when they give a call. You don't invite them to the White House. You don't include them in your deliberations. When the Republicans won the House, you didn't make any effort to create any kind of agenda that's somewhere in the middle between yours and theirs. All you did was use the Harry Reid to lock up the Senate and to lock up the country for 2 years, and then to try to run against the do-nothing Congress. Do-nothing Congress. There's only one reason why the Congress can't do anything. It's because you won't let them do it. And your henchmen are backing you up in the Senate. So at the end of the day, I'm not sure that what this country needs right now is a lot of bipartisanship, because what it first needs to do is a lot of cutting. And Democrats are not too comfortable with cutting. But after the first rounds of trim, I would say, yeah, let's figure out the things that are really important to both sides, and let's really work together and show some respect to each other, and show respect for each other's views and insights. And if we have that type of scenario, I think that will advance the cause of our country. One last thing. Paul Ryan, of course, is the current vice presidential nominee, and that was a fellow who you went out of your way to humiliate publicly. And that's one of the dirtiest tricks of your presidency, is when he had brought up issues in the healthcare debate in public, and you invited him to attend your speech in a university, sit in the front row. He thought that you were going to incorporate some of his ideas, and then you got up and you just put him down and his ideas down, and used it as an opportunity to let him sit there and squirm and be humiliated in public. So if that's the kind of approach you have to bipartisanship, I think people in this country who would like to see fair-minded debate, who would like to see the best ideas of both sides being brought to the table, your candidacy should have no appeal to them at all. My apologies. With all due respect, Mr. President, thank you very much.